Okay, nice. Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of enLIGHTen Up with Div and Deb. And today we thought we would chat about adulting. And that's come about because I've been exploring maturity as a theme, and Deb's shared some articles and resources with me about what does it really mean to be mature? And one I particularly liked because it talked about elements of what is childlike behavior, what is adolescent-like behavior, and what does it actually mean to be an adult? So I wonder if you want to speak into those differences a bit.
So what caught your eye or mind in reading those articles? Like what might signify childlike behavior or motivation compared to adolescent or adult? How did you process
the thing
that?
about childlike behavior is it's very simply, I move towards pleasure and away from pain, and that's all there is to it. So there's this degree of simplicity that's like, this feels nice, I like this. This feels bad, I don't like this. And that's childish behavior, and the rules that we have are based on that. Then the next kind of so it's very hedonistic, basically. So childish behavior is very hedonistic, self-seeking. Can
I just say it's also very immediate.
Yes.
I
immediate
want
gratification.
this
Right
and
now.
I want this now, or I don't want this and this must stop right now. And it's all self-orientated and very immediate and very black and white.
Yeah.
There's not really much flexibility or room for movement.
Yeah, those are great hallmarks of what is childish thinking. And it's interesting, it's very immediate. So there's a big difference between being present in the moment and being childish, which is like, yes, there's a childlike wonderment that's possible when we're present, and that is also possible in and through with maturity. So as we kind of evolve beyond childlike, we come to the adolescent stage, and in the adolescent stage there is it's more complex rule making, and it's more transactional thinking, and that's a hallmark of being a teenager. I'll do this for you if you do this for me, like that kind of transactional thinking. It doesn't necessarily have to be as immediate gratification, but it's certainly not, it's certainly still based on the same principles of I like pleasure, I don't like pain. And it's just a higher order way of applying those same concepts. What else would you say about adolescent thinking? What else would you add to that? Still very self-serving. Mm-hmm. Still very self-serving.
It is also has a quality or characteristic of certainty. So it might be a little more complex than just the black and white binary. Of children, but there is still this, I know this. And
I'm right.
And I'm right, and this is truth. And it's amazing how much adolescents absolutely know they've got this sorted out. Kind of thing.
So true. There's no space for honoring somebody else's reality that might be different, because I know best.
Yes. And so there is a quality of incredulity or ridiculousness, if you could have thoughts or perspectives that are not aligned with this, like, how ridiculous, how could you be considering that that's a thing, this is truth.
Yeah, I get that.
But transactional is the key characteristic. The child is, I want no pain, I want only pleasure, I want it now, and I'm only considering now. The teenager shifts to, I want what I want, and I realize that I've got to have some kind of transaction with another for me to get what I want and need.
Yeah. And then, so what is actually adulting then? When we go beyond adolescence to true maturity, what true maturity to me is the for the sake of, like, because I want. And one of the things that was clear in the article was, because teenager is based on the rules of society, like this is how I play the game transactionally to get what I want, whereas true adulting is very inward, values focused, self-reflection focused, very much focused on who am I and how do I turn up in the world, and what is important to me. And it might not be the things that society at large values. It might not be the things, and there's a more dynamic appreciation that in every moment is pain and pleasure both exist in wherever we are in each moment. So there's an ability to honor more full spectrum and take multiple perspectives. What else would you say is true of for this? So there's virtue for the sake of virtue. There isn't a transactional element to it. What else is adulting? Oh, the delayed gratification bit.
Absolutely.
The ability to say, right now in this moment, I'm going to make this choice because this is actually aligned with kind of the vision I hold for myself, my values, the me that I choose to be, that kind of whatever values-based living that person is doing.
Yes, so there's certainly a capacity to inhibit impulse, a level of self-mastery that has come from self-discipline, and being able to delay gratifications is one of the outcomes or results of that self-mastery and impulse control. There is a willingness to take 100% responsibility for self and everything that is happening in my life, which we might contrast that with the teenager who is wanting to have some kind of negotiation. Well, I have this problem in my life and I want you to take some of the risk. Okay, if I'm going to try and be an adult, I'll take some responsibility for myself, but you have to take some of the blame too, because that's what's fair.
Yeah, I'm so thinking of all the times I did that in relationships. Very teenagery. Yeah.
So it's a bit paradoxical because the full focus is on self, me, my life, my behavior, my responsibility, and taking 100% responsibility. But at the same time, there's this full consideration of others too, in balance to that. And that seems quite paradoxical because it's kind of all for myself. I am doing what I am doing for my alignment with me being the fullest and most responsible self I can be. Others benefit from that. And there's a consideration of others, but it's kind of fully for self, yet in a way kind of very selfless. I'm not sure how we can explain that.
Yeah, that really is the paradox, because from that genuine mature space, because self isn't considered more so than others. There's a respectfulness that's there in the perspective of the full spectrum. There's a level of respect that's kind of inbuilt. So in that maturing, yes, there's honoring. I'm 100% responsible for everything that shows up in my life and how I choose to respond to it. And even those terms of selfish and selfless kind of disappear in that space because they're not really appropriate. They're only there in transactional thinking. They're there in the teenager model of me and you and the fairness, kind of the scales and the, they're there in that space, but they're not actually, they don't really have a space in genuine adulting, which is 100% I'll look after this space. Full stop.
Yes, and a big full stop there.
Full stop.
something else that just occurred to me is that there is a willingness to 100% mind your own business.
Yeah.
And so I may be in relationship to others, and they may or may not be taking 100% their ratio of how much responsibility they're going to take for themselves and how much they're going to want the world to change, negotiate for things to be the way they want, and just a kind of observing of that and minding my own business and respecting that other person has their own business and their own path to get there. And that song comes to mind, Live and Let Live.
Yeah, well, and that's adulting at its finest to me, is really recognizing, the three kinds of business.
Yes, tell us the three kinds of business, Divya.
Well, there's my business, there's their business, your business, and then, God's business, and that's it. Like, there's the things that I'm responsible, that I can directly respond to. They're the things that are beyond me, that just, the weather, beyond my capacity. And then there's other people's business, which, it's really, adulting is about just, what's my business? And let me do my bit, let me put my attention on my business, and that's it. Mm-hmm.
And I think you mentioned a word, respect. That is definitely part of the adult mature thinking, where you don't just feel, well, I can only attend to my business and I'm going to frustrate myself if I try and meddle in other people's business. It's more than that. There is a respect and honouring, a compassionate understanding, like a respecting of the other person and how they're attending to their business. And empathetic, let me say, like I might see somebody not attending to their business and I go, I remember when I didn't used to do that too, and how important a spot in the path that was too. That's still someone attending, being on their path. Let me just mind my own business and trust the process.
Yeah.
Not a judging or demeaning of that. So I wonder if there's some element of this, certainly not judgment, but kind of empathetic respect.
There's an honoring element. So just as you speak into that, I'm really feeling sometimes unintentionally ridicule when I'm amused by something, and it seems ridiculous in some ways, and it's not really fully honoring. Not really fully honoring.
So it brings me back to I remember in my teenage stage where there is the development of the ego identity. This is happening a lot in the adolescent phase. Who am I? I don't fully understand it yet. How do I come to an understanding of who I am and my place in the world? And in that phase, there is coming to know self by comparison to other things. And my mind has gone to the racing carnivals at school, and it's like, oh, they're faster than me, I'm faster than them, oh, I'm this fast, or I'm good at this thing, they're good at that, and I'm good at that. And it's a kind of a jockeying for concept of self relative to what's out there. And the adult lets go of that. I'm not further along in my path than you, or you're not further along in your path. We're just, all right, okay. There's no comment to make about, oh, I see how you're attending to your business, and that's none of my business. My business is how I'm attending to my business. Very, that's very contrasting between the adolescent maturity and the adult maturity.
Yeah, I get that. Okay, far out. I don't reckon I'm an adult anywhere. I reckon I was just an adolescent relative to the childishness in other aspects. You know, because because to the child, the adolescent seems mature. Like, do you remember, like, as a kid, you look at teenagers?
Oh, I am definitely a big grown up now. I get to vote and drive a car, and I have a job and my own money, and I can make my own decisions, and I'm in control of my life.
Totally. So they're just relative to the childishness that once was, or that in every aspect, there's some aspects that are in adolescence and that feels quite mature.
So what's coming to my mind is it's that they're not like separate cups. So child is here, adult is here, adolescent is here, but it is, so you think of the adolescent phase, of course, here is a very adult-like and kind of, oh, I have some quite adult-like responses and some quite adolescents. And then you have down this end of that whole thing where there's the overlap between the child and adolescent too, and you see young adolescents being very immature at times and very, very mature at times. And not only is this kind of blur at the edges of one phase and the other, but there's a movement back and forward between the different phases. It's definitely a continuum.
It's definitely a continuum, and whilst we have kind of a resting default state, it's very much like, as you say that, what comes to me is the same way we have an emotional tone that's a resting default, that's, you know, this is our standard resting like emotional tone. We can still be at different points on the continuum moment by moment.
Correct. Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the other thing that I would say in reflection of what I heard you say when you kind of said, oh, on reflection, I think I might be adolescent in every category or area or aspect of self, to have that awareness and the honesty to own that is very adult-like. It requires self-awareness, meta-awareness, and that honesty is just taking 100% responsibility for where you are.
Yeah, there's also some sadness in it too, though. It's you just I get that that's, you know, it's honest. It is honest for me to say this is where I am, and yet there is some sadness that's there. And I'm not quite sure what that's about yet.
our listeners, I might say that might be some cognitive dissonance, which is a very beautiful thing, because something very magical happens when we get a new awareness that, oh, I thought I was this, and yet I see these behaviors say I'm not being who I am. And then something magical happens after that moment of a little bit of upset with ourselves.
Yeah, well, because I'm reminded of like years ago, 5 years ago now, when I was very much minding somebody else's business and was very much focused on, I don't like this is not fun to me, I don't want this, and the kind of gentle invitation that was, this is for your maturing. This is for your mature. This is for you, for your maturing. I remember very clearly being told explicitly in meditation, this is your work, do your work. Regularly, frequently. And I guess I had thought, well, my work is done. Not necessarily realizing, well, gone from the child to the teenager, the adolescent, and there's a whole new season that's upon me in maturing in a new way, you know?
So in our pre-conversation, what came up, you were saying how you used one of the articles to do a self-audit, and I thought that was really fascinating. And it sounded to me like you've created a great process, and I wonder if we could turn it into a tool for people. There are some models that break up areas or aspects of life into a category of 9. Oh, that's 9 in sign language for our deaf watchers. I'll show you all 9 fingers for those that are not. 9 categories. You just used categories based on what came to you in a meditation, or just in your contemplating?
Yeah, so there's 8 that are there that came to me, and it was in contemplating for me to be fully, like, this was I was reflecting on sovereignty, and in my reflection on sovereignty, what does that mean if I'm fully sovereign? What are all the aspects of that? So that was about being fully able-bodied, like taking full responsibility for my health and well-being in the physical sense, able-bodied, spiritually aligned, purpose-driven, emotionally intelligent, financially secure, socially nourished, sexually fulfilled, and mentally resilient. So those were the categories that came to me as, these are important to me. These are the things that are important to me, that I be sovereign in all aspects of this. And what that signifies to me is, like, I mind my business about these, and I don't look to anyone else for, this is my business, that I be fully healthy in all these aspects.
And so you made some of the characteristics, you identified some of the characteristics of child, adult, and adolescent and adult, and you go, if I look at myself very honestly in relation to how I'm supporting myself physically, let's say, is it pleasure and pain? Is it driven by that? Does it have some kind of black and white thinking about it, and very immediate and stubborn? Or is it more transactional? I will do this so I get this. What were the things that you use to identify? Because you didn't use them all like we just explored just then. What were the characteristics of child that you used?
Hedonistic, transactional. Which is basically, I want what I want is the child, and then the teenager is the tit for tat, like, you know, give and take, so transactional. And then the virtuous is the adult. It's like for giving's sake, for the good, like the thing that you do when nobody's watching. When nobody's watching, do you choose to eat the kale? When nobody's watching, or do you choose to eat it like that? So these are the bits that I'm like, let me be honest with myself. Where am I, like, and this is teenagery, this is teenagery, this is, you know, like noticing there's that. But and I guess it's helpful to have a mirror reflecting back, saying, well, I see you on this end of the spectrum of the teenager spectrum, you know, and that is only possible with someone who's kind of, don't want to use the word further along, but, you know, that has kind of been in that spot in some ways, in maturing, because you can't really get that feedback, I think, from someone who hasn't. And that's been a challenge for me previously. It's been a challenge for me is the feedback that I get is from people who haven't, like, stood where I'm standing.
Yes. So if a teenager was to say to another teenager, so do you think I'm grown up and responsible? They're going to be like, oh yeah, Bubby, you're so cool. Like, check you out. Might not, or, you know, the child looks at the adolescent and goes, oh my God, you're such a big grown up. I want to grow up to be just like you. So who reflects back to you where they experience you're up to will be perhaps a reflection a little bit of where they're up to.
Yeah. Well, and I guess so that begs the question, can we ever really get clean feedback? Is it possible to yesterday's topic was on projection. Is it possible for us to ever really get clean feedback, given that we're all projecting all of the time?
Is it possible for us to give clean feedback? Your question is it possible for anybody to ever be cleanly seeing me or giving me feedback? And can we do that for others? Just before addressing that, can I share with those that are listening why this is important to contemplate? And that's the model of the Johari window. So if you visualize a square and the old-fashioned windows that you would draw when you're a child, you know, windows were always square and they had this cross in the middle of them. This is a Johari window. And in this quadrant is the things that I know about myself that the world knows about me and can see. We can see that I'm kind of Caucasian and have some silver hair, and it could be quite publicly known, my address and so forth, right? That's things I can see that the world can also see. And then in this window is the things that I know about myself in the privacy of my own world and experience, that others might not see and know. And they're the things I might share in conversation or share with a friend, yeah, or with the world. So I can let you know things about me that I know about me. Down in this quadrant is the things you can see about me that I can't see. And people might point that out. Mothers sometimes like to do that. Parents like to do that with their children. Teachers like to do that. Give you feedback about things that they can see because they have certain experience and skill that you might not have. And so this is what you're talking about. How can I get the feedback? I can see these things about me, and we both can see these things about me, but somebody has to be able to see some things about me that I can't see, that are hidden from my own self. Now, this quadrant that I'm talking about, if we don't get that feedback, what happens is we live in this top section of the window where we're like, oh, I'm all sorted. I'm doing fine. Everything I know about myself that was out of place, I've attended to and adjusted. But we can't, unless we have some mirror back, there's only so much that we can do. So that getting feedback actually is quite vital. And you pose an important question to us. Is that possible, given that human beings can only give from where they're up to along the spectrum and continuum? Can we give it, and is it possible to get it? What would you say? My answer is going to be yes.
Well, so that's why I really love the clean language feedback model, which wasn't even when I asked that question. But there's a reason I've been drawn to this feedback model for a while, and the clean language feedback model, there's only 3 parts to it. I reckon it's a brilliant way to have conversations and give feedback. The first bit is I observe X, and that's the data point, the thing that we actually see. The second part is the inference I've made from that, or the meaning I've made about that, is Y. And then the third bit is, and the impact that that's had on me is Z. And the reason this is such a powerful way to give and receive feedback is for the person that is giving it, they get a chance to really slow down and see where their meaning making is going on, and share their process of their associations. And then the listener can choose what's important to take on board. This, they can when it's broken down like that. So yeah, absolutely, we can give clean feedback, and we can receive clean feedback when we have good tools and useful ways of separating what are your complex equivalents and associations. What do you think it means to be an adult? Because plenty of people think to me, you're so mature, you're so, and if I'm actually given proper feedback using a tool like this, then I actually know what's useful for me to attend to in that. This data point, what's the meaning that you made about that, the effect that it's had. So, yeah.
And that takes me back to a great model. Thank you. And that's great in relationships, isn't it? It allows us to take responsibility for the meaning that we're making and the impact our meaning making has had on us. And you still get the feedback because you get to see through my eyes. What I actually observed was this, and then I made this inference, and then I had this impact. Of course, that lets the person know, oh, I could adjust what I do if I would like to.
And then it becomes a clean exchange where there's choice. Like, do I want if this is the story that this person's making up, then they can choose to make up a different story. I could choose to have a different behavior, and it's a responsible exchange.
I could choose to input at that middle level and go, oh, actually, I have a different meaning for that, or a different intention for that, whatever. But that's nice, those 3 structures of the feedback and experience. I was thinking how my very first experience of recognizing some clean and unclean was at university, where we had to, actually it was, that psych experiment where there was a car accident and a filming of the car accident, and they said to some participants in the research, how was there glass how fast was the car going when it smashed into the thing? And others was, how fast was the car go? Oh, what speed was the car going? Or they changed that to be more neutral when the car hit the when the car hit the thing. So even a change from smashed, you know, the car collided with the pole and the car smashed into the pole. One is slightly less clean than the other, right? And I remember we had to do some practice about, or we were looking at some research between when eyewitnesses say what they actually saw. I was standing here and a car came from the left and a person was there, and or when it is emotive and they sped along and just smacked right into him without even looking or caring, and how our own experience will bring things in. And after this, they'd asked these two different questions about the video. Then they asked, was there any glass on the in the scene? And those that heard the word smashed saw glass, and those that had just a clean kind of questioning about what it was that they saw and allowed them to make assumptions, they didn't see glass there, and there was no glass there. And yet these people were absolutely certain that they saw glass there. Do you know about this experiment?
Well, this is the first I'm hearing about this experiment.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's one of those classic ones that show how the mind is always adding in things, and how our choice of words can be very subtle in distorting the experience. So a key thing in giving feedback is to listen for descriptions of data, which I seek to do with you. So you are saying this now, and I recall an occasion when you did that, and this doesn't seem to match that. That's clean feedback.
Yeah.
We can't expect, though, given that experiment that I just shared with you, we can't expect that people are generally going to be clean. So I wonder how we could receive the way in which they give feedback and kind of clean off some of the stuff that might be theirs to find.
Yeah, it's the mining for jewels bit. That's the mining for jewels bit. Well, let's talk about that tomorrow, since we've been on for about 45 minutes already. Let's talk about it tomorrow.
Okay.
About when someone offers us feedback, how do we know which bit's ours?
Sounds great.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Leave us a comment, and if there's anything you'd like us to explore next week, and we'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye for now.